Okay, in this lesson we're going to look at another kind of form of a linear equation. So far we have learned about the slope-intercept form. We've actually learned about standard form. Standard form looks like ax plus by equals c. That was the first form we started with. And then today we're going to talk about this new form, which is called point-slope form. And this is if you would use point-slope form if you are given the slope, or let's say you calculate the slope and you have a point other than the y-intercept. By the way, how do you know if you have the y-intercept? What about the point says to you, I am the y-intercept? There's one thing. The x is 0, exactly. So whenever you have x is 0, you have b, and that's part of the y equals mx plus b, and then if you have the slope, all you have to do is insert that in here. So here, if we want to determine the slope of a line that passes through the point 0, -4, and 6, 8, the very first thing we would do to calculate the slope is use the slope formula, m equals, does anybody know what it is by heart yet? Close. It's going to be the difference in the y values, because that's the rise, over the difference in the x values, because that's the run. So that we say it's the change in y over the change in x. And what I would always do is I would write the formula down to make sure I got that part right. And then I would label each point. So that way I know I can just go ahead and plug those in. So to find the slope, we're going to have 8 minus what? Yeah, -4. And it's important to put the minus and negative, because what happens when you have minus and negative? It turns into a plus. And then we have, tell me what numbers to fill in next. Perfect. And the order matters, so we wouldn't have 0 minus 6. Now that's 8 plus 4 over 6, which is 12 divided by 6, which is 2. Okay, so the slope is 2. Now they want us to find the equation that passes, of the line that passes through the 2 points. Well, do I know the y-intercept? How do you know I know the y-intercept? Because which one of these points is the y-intercept? -4 is the y-intercept, and that's because the x is equal to 0. Since you have x equals 0, you have the y-intercept. So let's put it together. We know the slope is 2, the y-intercept is 4. Who can tell me the equation of the line? Starts with y equals 2x minus 4. Y equals mx plus b. Very good. Now for the next one, it says determine the slope of the line that passes through these 2 points. If you look at the 2 points, are either one of those points the y-intercept? They're not. And that's because why? How do you know that? Neither one of them has x equal to 0. So let's calculate the slope. We have our slope formula back here. So I'm going to identify x1, y1, x2, y2, and tell me what to plug in here. -8 minus 6 over 2 minus 5? Minus -5. That's one of the most common mistakes that people will make, okay? And so now we simplify. The numerator is going to be -14. The denominator is going to be 2, basically plus 5, which is 7. And what's -14 divided by 7? Excellent. And so this is the whole reason why we have this point-slope form. So the point-slope form, I had written it up here. I'm going to write it down here since I had to scroll up. So it's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. The way this works is you can use either point. It doesn't actually matter which point you use. In fact, I'll do both of them just to prove that it doesn't matter. We have our slope and we have one point. Okay, we know that neither point is the y-intercept. We said that's because x is not 0 in either point. So if I set this up, I go y minus, let's use x1, y1, y minus 6 equals m, which is negative 2, times x minus negative 5. If I'm going to write minus negative 5, what could I turn that into? Yeah, minus a negative becomes a giant plus. Now, that's not in slope-intercept form. So if I wanted to know what the y-intercept is, I could get y by itself, and then I would have y equals mx plus b. How would I get y by itself to turn it into slope-intercept form? Well, the first thing I could do is distribute the negative 2. So I have y minus 6 equals negative 2x. Negative 2 times positive 5 is a negative 10. And then what could I do to get y by itself? Add 6 to both sides, right? I get y equals negative 2x. What's negative 10 plus 6? Negative 4. Good. So this is my slope-intercept form. Now, if I wanted to do the same thing with the other point, let's say I call this one x1, y1, I could literally use the same exact equation. Y minus negative 8 is going to be y plus 8 equals negative 2, because that's our m, times x, and then what do I have? Minus 2. If you solve for y, I guarantee if we do it right, you're going to get the exact same y-intercept. So again, we would distribute the negative 2. I get y plus 8 equals negative 2x plus 4. Negative times a negative is a positive. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides to get y by itself. Y equals negative 2x minus 4. Same exact thing. We went from point slope form, and it's called point slope form because you're using one point and the slope, right? Just one point. And then we changed it into slope intercept form, which is our most friendly form when it comes to graphing. We know the slope, but you could also graph in point slope form too. You could plot the point and use the slope, use the rise and the run, to graph the line from that point. Usually you're doing that with slope-intercept form because you know the y-intercept, you're just plotting that point on the y-axis. Okay, any questions on this?